When my parents began to get old, they started having difficulties getting around the house, cleaning, doing the chores, etc. After taking the time to contemplate, they decided that they were going to sell the house and move in somewhere more elderly friendly. My brother and I wanted to object. We had grown up in that old farmhouse, and coming back home to visit on the holidays, to spend time with the whole family together, was always the highlight of the year. So many memories and traditions were made in that house, and it pained me to think that there would ever be a time when my mom and dad weren't there, waiting for us to come back home to visit. They could sense our dismay, so before the house was sold, they arranged for us to come back and have one last family dinner in that house. And that was the plan. Dinner, watch a movie, and take one last photo of us together in front of the house. My brother bought a plane ticket and arranged for me to pick him up at the airport. Together, for the last time, we made the trip to where we grew up. It always surprised me how many memories can be tied to a single place. The smell of the house when you first walk in, the sound of my parents cooking dinner in the kitchen, bickering with each other. It was all as I had remembered it. Everything was in its place, and I was home again. I had walked past my brother, who was on the couch petting the cat, and made my way into the kitchen to see if my mom needed help with anything. She said yes and asked if I could go down into the cellar and grab some more chicken broth for her, and of course, I said yes. As I was walking away, she stopped me, gave me a look that I had seen 1,000 times, and said, "Don't forget about the 5-second rule." That sentence alone carried a heavy load of nostalgia. When my brother and I were growing up, our parents would always tell us not to forget that rule. Every time, without fail, before going down into that old dusty cellar, they reminded us of the rule. The rule was simple. When you enter the cellar, you must turn on the light bulb that was hanging at the center of the room. And when you were leaving the cellar, you have 5 seconds to make it to the top of the stairs after the light goes out. They would never elaborate on why we had such a silly rule, or what would happen if you didn't follow it. When we were young, we didn't feel the need to second-guess our parents. After all, it was a simple rule, and we were always careful to adhere to it. Years passed, and nothing changed. There wasn't much to do down in the cellar, so we never really went down there. The only things there were gardening tools, some chemicals for cleaning, and a small pantry stocked with canned foods. It certainly wasn't a place for kids to play around in, which was why I assumed my parents made up the rule to begin with. They didn't want us down there, so they fabricated the ominous-sounding 5-second rule, which did a great job of deterring us. Kids are imaginative, and when we were young, we could only guess at what could be down there. I had propped the cellar door open and made my way down the long set of old wooden steps, using the faint light emanating from atop the stairs to navigate downwards to the small hanging light bulb in the center of the room, and quickly pulled on its chain to turn it on. I was a little surprised to find that the light still worked, as I was sure my elderly parents didn't come down here that often. Going from the house to the cellar was always quite surreal. One moment you were in a warm, nostalgic environment, and the next you were surrounded by claustrophobic concrete walls that seemed to creep in closer to you the longer you were in there. The air was stale, like all of it had been inhaled and exhaled long ago. A tall off-white cabinet at the far end of the cellar stood tall. It served as a pantry for food items that had a long shelf life and weren't used often enough to warrant them being stocked in the pantry upstairs. To its right, stacks on stacks of boxes filled that entire corner of the cellar. As a kid, whenever I did go down into that dark cellar, I was never alone. My brother always came with me, and I always came with him. While one of us grabbed whatever we came down there for, the other would stand watch. The person on watch would use their eyes to scan all the possible places a monster would hide in. When I was on watch, I would look at the boxes full of junk in the corner of the room and pray that I didn't see movement between the cracks. My brother would always watch the stairs, hoping that nothing would grab at our feet from the darkness below as we raced to the top. Being young and impressionable, we actually believed that there could be something down there, waiting for us to slip up or for the light to go out. I opened the dusty cabinet and began to dig through its contents. Once I got to the bottom shelf, I found what I was looking for, hidden in the very back, behind layers of other cans. A slender wooden safe. Behind layers of other cans, with the broth in my hand, I turned around and the light went out, filling the cellar with darkness. Startled, I took a couple steps back, but was stopped when I bumped into one of the many stacks of boxes in the corner of the cellar. The towers of cardboard shook, and a few boxes fell to the ground, spilling their contents as they toppled. Not that I could see anything. The dark was all-encompassing and all-consuming. 5, I counted in my head as I tried to steady myself and slow my breathing. I took a small step forward in the direction of the light bulb. I heard the boxes behind me shift. 4. I felt a gentle tug on the sleeve of my shirt. It was almost imperceptible with how slight it was. I probably wouldn't have noticed, but with all of my nerves on high alert, I felt everything. 3. I took another step forward, but my arm was pulled back, stopping me in my tracks. My heart hammered in my chest, and I could feel every beat. I remember yelling, "Let go," as I ripped my arm away. The grip was released, sending me tumbling towards the center of the room. 2. I stood back up as quickly as I could, facing the stacks of boxes in the corner of the room. In an instant, the hanging light bulb flickered back into view, illuminating my brother's face as he said, "Boo!" What followed was a mixture of anger and relief as I attempted to scold him. My words were drowned out by his laughter, and I don't think he heard a single thing I said. Neither of us turned off the light, and together we walked up those long wooden steps, back into the warm and familiar house that we grew up in. My brother swung the cellar door closed and guided the bolt into its metal sheath. It never occurred to me to question why exactly the cellar had a lock on the outside. There was nothing in there, so why have a lock? We were back in the kitchen, and my brother was telling our mom all about how he scared me senseless in the cellar. I couldn't help but smile. "And that's all it took," he said. "I turned the light off, and he started yelling. No, don't lie. If you hadn't snuck around behind the boxes, I wouldn't have yelled like that," I said. My brother only doubled down on what he said. "Okay, now you are lying. I didn't go anywhere near those boxes. You just started freaking out and flailing around in the dark after I killed the lights." "You didn't grab me from behind the boxes?" I asked. I couldn't tell if he was lying or not. Even if one of us was lying, neither of us broke character. My brother picked up on the seriousness in my tone and dropped his smile. "No," he said. "I turned the light off and you lost it." By that point, we were just staring at each other, trying to tell if the other person was lying or not. Even our mom looked uncomfortable. After dinner, we took a photo in front of the house, and that was the last time I saw that place with my own eyes. My brother flew home, and I made the long drive back to my place. The house was sold shortly thereafter. I can only hope that my parents told the new buyers about the rule.